this threat. An attack. Duty as director. Keep the Bureau safe.
Gentlemen, allow me to present Max Payne, New York's finest, with the biggest mobster body count ever. Dearest guests, prepare to die.
God damn it, I like Max Payne. Control is not Max Payne, but it is made by the same studio. Instead of a drunk detective, you now play as a psychic janitor, which is more fun than what you might expect. You play as Jessie. Jessie survived a paranormal incident as a child, but while she managed to escape, her brother got captured by a secret agency. Now some years later, she has finally located the agency headquarters, but it has been taken over by something weird, and she needs to understand what is going on to save her brother. There is a simple story in here, but there are a lot of moving parts, and it is a bit of a mess. The story have many layers of paranormal and abstract science magic, and while I can appreciate it to some extent, it can feel a bit cheap at times. You know, like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what will stick.
Drawing the pyramid.
The what?
The pyramid.
Don't you find that weird? I find that weird.
Sure.
Remedy haven't lost their touch, however. The game have good atmosphere, and there are plenty of striking cutscenes and good dialogues. The main story, though, is not more than okay, and it suffers from a lot of fluff and useless characters, while the main cast could have used some more development. It also suffers from the tell not show syndrome, where you will find countless documents hinting and teasing of dangerous and interesting paranormal events. But in the actual game, you will get to see very little of that.
Oh, you're back! Oh, thank you, thank you! If I look away, I don't know what this thing will do. You have to get me out of here!
Sadly, this is a trend in this game. The game is lacking in terms of variety when it comes to environments, weapons, and enemies. What is there is nice, but it gets a bit samey. Speaking of the combat, sorry, now I am being mean. I have very mixed feelings on the combat in this game. Movement feels great when you have unlocked the entire moveset, and it is awesome to fly around the place. There is a lot of dynamic damage to the environments, and throwing stuff is tons of fun, and you can get into a very good flow where the game truly starts to shine. However, when you scratch the surface, there are many problems with this game's combat. I have seen people complain about the weird difficulty curve, and I can understand why. The thing is that you can't take a lot of damage in this game, and to compensate for this, the enemy AI is completely brain dead. Often they will barely attack you, and when they do attack you, they can't aim for shit. As long as you keep moving around, you will most often be fine, but if you stay still, or if you are unlucky, then you can very quickly get killed. At times I wondered if the enemies are intentionally stupid, but then I saw my friendly human soldiers act the same way, so there is no getting around the fact that the game have bad AI. Another thing that annoyed me is that the game just teleports in enemies into the map. I don't like this at all, and I find it a very cheap way to spawn new enemies. And then we have the bullet sponge enemies. It looks bad, it is not fun at all to fight against. And sadly, it impacts your normal guns the most. The gun is way underpowered compared to your throw abilities, and I ended up relying heavily on just throwing stuff around, which further reduces the variety of the combat. Overall, even though the combat can be fun, it gets very samey and repetitive, and it is not as fun as it looks, and I grew bored of it before the end of the game. What more is there to say about this game? I have heard people calling this game a Metroidvania, and I guess this is true, as it has some open areas with some side quests and secrets, but it is true in the same sense that the game is an RPG, since it has skill tree and upgradable weapons. It is true, but not really. All in all, I find Control a step in the right direction compared to Quantum Break. It is not perfect, and there is a sense that it is pretending to be bigger than it actually is. But it is also not generic dogshit, and for all of my whining, it is still a game that I am happy that I played, and I would certainly recommend it to fans of the genre. A final example, before concluding, about my general feeling is the DLC. I haven't played them, despite owning them. I felt rather done with the game after completing the main campaign, but I was still curious about the DLC. One of them seems to be connected to Alan Wake, and that seems pretty interesting. It would be really sweet to get some cool forest levels with some new enemy types. But as a seasoned gamer, I don't get tricked very easily, so I snooked around a bit and looked at some gameplay videos of the DLC, and lo and behold, it is more of the same shit. How about no thanks? I would like another game like this. I want a Control 2. I want to be a psychic janitor, traveling around, solving weird mysteries. But I don't want to visit this place again and continue fighting the same enemies over and over again.
In a conceptual reality with power with our minds, what's the cause and what's the effect? Are we the starting point or just a necessary evil in this? A byproduct, a reflection, a projection?